We'll move to the other big story this evening. One of the IT world's biggest names, Phaneesh Murthy, has been sacked as CEO of well-known company iGate on charges of misconduct because he didn't make his relationship with an employee in his company public. She has filed claims of sexual harassment to the company. Mr. Murthy, in a conference call with journalists today, said that this was extortion, not harassment. He was in a relationship with her, but how this has opened the floodgates for sheer extortion. Let's just look at that story.
IT executive Phaneesh Murthy sacked for not disclosing a relationship. But the 49-year-old tainted CEO of iGate claims it is not a case of sexual harassment but one of extortion.
It was just a personal relationship. The company policy on the relationship is basically that if any two people in a company have a relationship, but technically they claim that it has to be informed. It's a small note in an employee handbook somewhere. I think if you look at your own employee handbook, it might very well be there. So that's all it is. It's basically you have to inform your superior.
His termination from the California-based outsourcing firm has reopened a decade-old scandal. This is the second time when Murthy has had to leave a company because of allegations of sexual misconduct. He left Infosys in 2002 after a sexual harassment lawsuit against him, but it was settled out of court. But are such cases brushed under the carpet in India? Sexual harassment at the workplace is rampant, but no one talks about it. Officially, just 17% of working women in major cities have admitted to it. But on condition of anonymity, 88% of women in IT companies reveal they have faced some form of sexual harassment. In the software capital itself, over 700 complaints were filed with the Karnataka Labour Department just last year. The catch? All of them unofficial. Anonymous emails, letters, and complaints without full details of a case. It was only in 1997 that sexual harassment at work was recognized in India when the landmark Vishaka guidelines were laid down. 16 years later, India has a law that may not be a deterrent. In 2013, Justice Verma's report recommended changes that were just partially implemented. The new law, which brings in its ambit even domestic workers and agriculture labor, both organized and unorganized sectors, but activists say the mechanism of filing complaints is too bureaucratic and could deter women from coming forward. NDTV Bureau Report.
Well, joining me on this debate tonight, really, is it about extortion, as Phaneesh Murthy claims? Is it really about the fact that whatever the truth is of this case, that sexual harassment cases are greatly underreported, especially in India? We made that point that in Bangalore, for instance, the Labour Department doesn't even have one case or complaint of sexual harassment with them. Are we sweeping it under the carpet? Joining me tonight on that, I'm joined by Mohandas Pai, currently, of course, with Manipal, but he was the former HR head of Infosys at a time when Phaneesh Murthy faced similar charges. There was then an out-of-court settlement on the sexual harassment charges. I'm also joined by Reena Mukherjee. She's a journalist who was with the Statesman. She actually complained and then lost her job. She went to the State Women's Commission and won her case only in 2003. I'm joined also by Vrinda Grover, a well-known lawyer who deals specifically in these issues, and also by Manish Mittal. He's a member of the NGO, the Save India Family Foundation, and he actually represented in front of the standing committee, his NGO as well, when the new law against sexual harassment in the workplace came into effect just about a year ago. Mr. Mohandas Pai, over to you first. As a former HR head, it's always difficult when an allegation like this comes up. Now, in this iGate instance, Mr. Murthy has apparently been sacked because he didn't disclose the relationship. He says no sexual harassment has been proved against him, and in fact, the point that a similar charge has been made against him and settled has opened the floodgates against him. Would you buy that argument?
No, I don't buy the argument, because what happened in 2002 was very clear. There were two things. One was the complaint of sexual harassment in a court with a very graphic description in the plaint by a former person who reported to him, and two, his suppression of the fact before the board, as Naran Murthy had spoken in the press conference. Both these things came together. The company was charged with negligence in protecting the woman employee in a court of law in the United States, and the company chose to settle with the complainant because of high costs. And Phaneesh Murthy was of course asked to go, and his accounts were settled. And in this case, from what I read, I find that he had a relationship which it says is consensual with the employee of the company. And obviously in the company, when a person who is a senior manager or a manager has a relationship, whether consensual or otherwise, with the employee who reports to him or is one of his direct or indirect reportees, then obviously there is a presumption that there is undue influence on that victim. And if the victim happens to complain, and I think as has been done in this case where outside counsel has come and made an investigation, obviously the odds are against you that you can get away, and that's exactly what has happened. I think the company has been right in taking the decision, and I don't buy this argument that it is consensual, it is there in small print. I think it's a bit too much.
In fact, interestingly, if this had happened in India, it's absolutely unlikely that a CEO of a company would be sacked really with on this basis. And that really, Reena Mukherjee, I'd really like to bring you in here and ask you about what happened with you, because here when you actually file a sexual harassment case, it's automatically assumed that the person who's complaining is either telling a lie or has to have evidence to support it. What is your experience of fighting a case like this?
In my case, when I had complained in the company, at that time, they had also initially just tried to brush it under the carpet and asked me to resign, which I refused to. Later on, when I took it up with the Women's Commission, when I took it up with the Network of Women in Media in India, they were forced to have a sexual harassment complaints committee put up. But in spite of that, in spite of repeated requests by the Women's Commission, they refused to have an investigation done into my complaint, and subsequently this complaint of mine had to be investigated into by the police.